Resistance against Nazi genocide took many forms besides armed combat and sabotage. Resistors found ingenious ways to hide people, change their identities, or smuggle them to safety. Teenagers were often among the first to recognize the Nazi menace and act. These are the stories of 3 young women who dared to resist.
My father was a lawyer. My mother played the piano, and they had a lot of music in the house. And my mother and father went to a lot of concerts and plays, and it was a very nice life in Berlin for us. When Hitler was elected, I remember getting back to school and who wore a swastika. Now, this was basically not allowed in school, but already at that time the teachers were afraid to say anything. And I remember her sitting next to me and saying, I can't play with you anymore. I went home and I told my parents, and they said, well, you know, this might happen once in a while, but there are lots of children that you don't like to play with either. So it wasn't told to me, well, that's because she's Gentile and she is a Nazi.
In 1933, the Ledermann family traveled to Holland to visit Barbara's Dutch grandparents. People there who recognized the danger in Germany urged them not to return to Berlin. After much agonizing, Franz Ledermann decided they should remain in Holland. The painful process of starting over began.
When we got to Holland, things were very different. This was 1933, and I went to 3rd grade. And that's where I met the Dutch kids. And they were very different from Germany. There was a little girl, though, that had some of the same problems I had. And her name was Margot Frank, and that was Anne Frank's sister. She and I started school together. This is the Merwede Plein, where I used to play, my sister used to play with Margot and Anne Frank. We came here every day after school, and there were very happy times. And after the Germans came, I guess we played for another year or so, till the world collapsed.
From 1939 through 1945, Nazi Germany spread terror across Europe and Russia. In each country, the genocide of Jews and other condemned groups followed a different timetable. A Jewish girl could still be living in relative freedom in Hungary, while her Polish counterpart was on a train to Auschwitz.
The Germans invaded on May 10th, 1940. And that was a horrendous day. And when we came back here to talk to various people and on the balconies, we used to talk together. And I suddenly saw that there were people that were lying there, that had tried to kill themselves. I kept saying to my father, what are they doing? Why do they want to kill themselves? And my father kept saying, well, things aren't very good for Jewish people, and, you know, they think that they will die, will get killed, or that they have to flee again and change countries again, and when you get older, it gets to be very hard. my father went over his library, and we got a big wash basket, and he had taken out all the books that he thought that the Germans wouldn't want him to have. And he put them all in the wash basket, and I remember carrying it with him to the large incinerator in the skyscraper. And we threw the books, these beautiful books, and they burned up. It was the most frightening time you can imagine. I was 15. I remember friends of ours being asked to come to the railroad to be shipped off, and they were told they were going to work. And these people would say, well, you know, I took heavy work boots and I took a warm coat, but I also took some lipstick and I took some makeup, because after work we will be having a campfire and we'll sit around and we'll be having, you know, a good time. These were teenagers talking. I didn't know anything about politics and just didn't think of anything else than what teenagers in those days thought about. But when I got to be 16, I met a fellow named Manfred. He had told me about people who had been taken to camps, concentration camps in Germany, and he thought that all the young people who were going happily off to work, so-called, that they would end up being dead. I started arguing with my father. He believed that if the Germans said you were going to go to a work camp, that you would go to a work camp. When my father said, you know, if you get called up, you will go, because otherwise you will endanger us. I said to him, I'm not going. I am not going.
By the middle of 1942, Jews in Holland had seen their jobs, their possessions, and their freedom stripped away. They were required to wear a yellow Star of David, and Jewish children were banned from public schools. Barbara, age 17, attended a Jewish-owned dance school, where she immersed herself in ballet.
In 1942, there was a sudden roundup by the Germans. They rounded up the Jews in our area, and as I saw them coming, I got very much afraid, and I took up my star and I ran down the stairs, and I ended up, I saw the tram roll, and the Germans had not stopped the tram. The Germans had not stopped the tram, and I could get on and go to my dancing class, where there were people who were going to hide me for the duration of this particular roundup. This time we were very lucky. The Germans let my parents go and I could go back home. That was when I decided that it was time for me to disappear. I changed my name, I took off my star, I became a non-Jewish person.
All over Nazi-occupied Europe, the first thing a Jewish person passing as a Christian needed was false identity papers. Barbara got her papers with help from her boyfriend Manfred, who was already involved in resistance work. She moved into a boarding house and continued to study dance. After 8 months, Barbara's parents pleaded with her to come home for a visit. Her friends warned her that it was too dangerous. Roundups and deportations could happen at any time. But Barbara yearned to see her family.
I was so homesick, and they were homesick for me, and so I put on my star and came home. But that next morning at 6 o'clock, somebody told us that this whole area was going to be picked up. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I kept saying, this can't be happening. I mean, I'm only home for one day and one night, you know. And anyway, my father, who really had always said he didn't want me to go underground, that time he said, go. We were hugging and kissing, and they had to get ready, you know. So I, of course, took the star off, and I went downstairs. And there were loudspeakers going around saying all Jews have to prepare themselves. Gentiles are not allowed in the street. And I was in the street. I did not know what to do. And I just walked. And you know, all the rivers and canals in Amsterdam, it's so easy to close off a neighborhood. You just stand on the bridges. And I went to the first bridge, and there was a Dutch NSB'er, a black uniformed man standing there, and he said, nobody is allowed on the street, go back to where you came from. So I knew there were more bridges, and I went to the next bridge, and they said nobody is allowed to cross the bridge. So I started to cry, and I started to run, and I went to the next bridge, and I think it was this bridge that I'm standing at. And there was one soldier standing in the middle of the bridge, and it was a German soldier. And he said to me, "Was is denn los?" And I said, "Ik wil naar mijn moeder. Ik moet naar mijn moeder toe. Ik wil meine Mutti sehen." And he said, wo ist denn die Mutti? And I said, "Da." And he said, "March. Go. Quick." And I ran across the bridge, and I was free. And he saved my life. And then I walked to Manfred's house, and there was peace and quiet, and people were going to church, and nobody knew what went on one block up. We did have hiding places in our apartment, and I had begged my mother, just, if you, please, all of you go in there. There were papers there. We had papers for all of them. So my father just couldn't do it. I said to them, at least put Susanne in there, my sister. At least put her in there. We will go get her. And Manfred did go. They went at night. And all they came out with are some rugs and some silver and whatever they thought was of value, paintings. But not my sister.
In 1943, Barbara continued posing as a Christian and studying ballet in Amsterdam, not knowing what would become of her parents or sister. Manfred and others became her family. Manfred's sister Margot rented rooms for all of them in the home of a German woman who sympathized with the Nazis.
Ja?
Ben jij het?
Ja, wie ben jij dan?
Barbara.
Ach, Barbara, waar kom jij nou vandaan? Waar kom jij vandaan? Ik heb je zo lang niet gezien.
Ja, dat is waar.
Waar ben je al die tijd geweest?
It was a stroke of risky genius.
Heb je in Amerika
German Jews, living undercover in Amsterdam, doing resistance work right in the home of the enemy.
I was looking for a house for me and for my fiancé. So, and then I came in that house more than 50 years ago.
In this very house,
in this house, yeah. And there was a woman. She opened the door, and they spoke not very good Netherlands Dutch. And I said, "Are you a German?" "Yes, I am a German." I said, "If you like, I can speak German with you." "Oh," she said, "are you a German? I like to have German in my house." And Glaubensgenossen, how you say that?
Somebody who thinks the same as I do.
Yeah.
Young resistors defied Nazi laws and listened in secret to radio broadcasts from London. Some published underground newspapers that Barbara and Margot helped to distribute.
You remember every Sunday morning I had to go out with a bag with
Newspapers.
It was a very dangerous thing.
Very dangerous. And I would be told, take this bag, and we put lettuce and tomatoes on top.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And we carried it to a stoop.
Sometimes.
And we weren't even told who would pick it up, and we weren't supposed to wait.
Yeah.
You know, they would tell us, put it in number 19.
Yeah, put it there,
that
put it there, put it there.
That's how we had the news about what really happened.
Yeah.
And then if somebody would say, "Can you hide so-and-so? This place has gotten dangerous."
Yeah.
If you could, you would do it.
Would.
When they asked me, "How did you spend the war?" I said I stood in line for food. Because we had many people here.
Yeah.
And you could not, for instance, go and buy for 7 people. That was dangerous.
Yeah, that was dangerous.
So you split up. You bought for 4.
Yeah, and I got little coupons.
Coupons. Where did we get the coupons?
I get it from that man. I think he was a little in love with me.
Oh, that's good.
And he gave everything I need.
Barbara risked her life daily, passing in public as a non-Jew in a city where many people knew her real identity. The danger increased when she began performing with the famous ballerina Ivana Georgi. Georgi was believed to be a personal friend of Hitler. Her ballet audiences were full of German officers, and anyone could have betrayed Barbara.
Now, there was one thing about that, and that was that I got these great papers, which allowed me to be out after curfew. And as I remember it, I managed to do a few good things with those papers, and that is transporting people who had to be moved from one hiding place to another. In these little carriages that they used to have, they took out the little bench in the back, and the person being moved would be the bench. He would be huddled down, and I would be sitting on his back. And if somebody would stop you, you could show the papers and a big smile with the makeup still on, and it worked. I know I was scared and worried about it, but it never stopped me. I mean, you're 17, you're 18. This was exciting. The winter from 44 to 45, when, you know, everybody was liberated except us. There was no more gas, there was no water, there was no coal to make electricity. It was so cold. And I remember all of us getting in bed together, not for fun, but just for warmth. And we put everybody's blankets and mattresses on top of us, and we were still freezing. And the year came to an end, and, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen. We knew there was going to be an end to this, but we just didn't know when. The Canadians arrived, and everybody went crazy. I mean, the girls clambered up and threw flowers, and the Dutch government made a big party all over Amsterdam. And the air was soft, and there was music everywhere, and it was just the most heavenly thing. And I know what you're thinking. Was I thinking about my parents? Was I thinking about my sister? No, I wasn't. Because that was liberation first. And then we were going to think about how to find out about things and what to do. There were lists of people who were supposed to be on trains coming back to Holland. And my mother's name was on one of those lists. And of course I went to the train station and she wasn't there. After the war, there were 450,000 people walking all over Europe. They were displaced. Poles were in Germany, Germans were in France, French were in Holland. I mean, people were all over the place. And I kept thinking, maybe they got lost somewhere and they will come back.